My name is Madam Ansa, and I am so grateful to have you here in the Kitchen Witchy Tarot class. There are 4 weeks in this session, and there are 2 different classes at 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock. This is the beginning of the second week, second session. So this is a specialty topic, and we're going to be talking about the people cards and personal saints. So if you have a deck, I encourage you to shuffle on through now and get out your people cards. For anyone who is new to the deck, that would be the cards that are typically called, King, Queen, Princess, Prince, Page, that sort of thing. In my deck, which is the World Spirit Tarot deck, it is a very traditional deck, but we have Seer, Seeker, Sybil, Sage. They are essentially the third arcana. In a traditional deck, which is usually 78 cards, back in history, you will have found more and different ones. So in a traditional deck, which is usually 78 cards, more and different cards, if you go back in history, we have 2 kinds of cards. We have the major arcana, which we just spoke about in our previous session, and we have the minor arcana. It has been put forth that you can also think of the minor arcana as having a sort of a subsection, those being the people cards. It is as if they are their own set of cards. They are their own arcana. They are the intermediary arcana, if you want to think about it that way. We'll talk more about that. As you may know, your deck is organized ace through 10. So there'll be, ace through 10 cups, ace through 10 wands. Then you have typically 4 of these people face or court cards, going from a youthful aspect to some sort of more mature aspect, something like Princess, Knight, Queen, King, something to that effect. And then again, those majors tell a whole other story. From the Fool to the Universe, they go, sort of from the Alpha to the Omega. This session is going to be talking specifically about those people cards, the court cards, sometimes known as the noble or face cards. Just letting someone else in. Come on in. We were just talking about the people cards in the tarot, which essentially make a whole sub-genre all of their own. In a traditional deck, there are 16 of them, and as some of you may know, one of the ways to think about those is you can make there's a pretty comfortable corollary between those 16 personality types and the Myers-Briggs. That is a whole other class that we could lean into. I know some of you have probably already spent some time studying that, as I may have mentioned it in the past. Please understand that every system of analyzing the cards is being applied centuries after the cards were born. Sometimes folks will ask about, the correlation between tarot and astrology, for example. Astrology is ancient. Astrology as we currently understand it is several thousands of years old, but humanity has been staring up for hundreds of thousands of years, since before we were humanity, going, I noticed some patterns. Tarot, however, while it is old to us, it is only hundreds of years old. So when we overlay a system like astrology or Kabbalah or herbalism or the Myers-Briggs personality test, it is totally a useful way to look at the cards and to understand things, but it is never an absolute system. It is always a matter of these personality types are very clearly these, archetypes in the deck, and these ones we're going to spend a lot of time arguing about in tarot forms. So please know that as you may lead into your areas of special interest. So, but today what we're going to do with our people cards, I would like to just tell you a little bit about the cards themselves for anyone who is new to understanding them, and then explore this notion of those cards as intercessionary entities, as it were, or sort of personal saints. So an important note about the people cards, when they come up in a reading, be that your Page of Wands or your Sage of Swords, whatever, when they come up, they are typically describing, first of all, it may be a person that is actually in your situation, relative to your question. It may be that guy from the office or that member of your family that, you are talking about in the reading and so forth. They are also nearly always referring to an aspect of yourself that you need to cultivate, be aware of, and so forth. So please know there's that aspect. But then there's also, in that, please be aware that you want to steer away from leaning into the gender and age of a card. Like, well, this clearly can't refer to that guy in the office because they're being represented by, a person in the card who looks like a young woman, and that is an older man. It can't be them. I encourage you to see beyond, the gender and age, because of course we all have aspects of ourselves that are more or less youthful, more or less experienced, and gender is really increasingly irrelevant, especially in the context of these cards. One of the things that I want to share with you in that realm, however, is that if you separate the gender, then those 4 stages, as it were, it's typically something like a youthful or naive personality. That might be a page, a princess, a seer, something like that. They're usually described as a perceiver, a learner. That is the personality that comes up in these cards. That is like, I don't know everything about this, but I'm interested and I'm learning. When the cards come up and they are called something like a knight or a prince, maybe a seeker, it's usually a person on some kind of a horse. There's usually some very dynamic aspect. I always think of that as the person who's on a quest with some missionary zeal. They don't have all the information, but they're ready to find out what they don't know by contact with reality. They are ready to come out of the driveway and see what's out in the world. The card that is described as the king or the sage in some decks, this one is also the knight, is usually some sort of seated person, like on a throne, and they are in some sort of leadership or mastery in their field. And lastly, that queen or the sibyl is like a steward or a big picture person in their field. So we'll lean into a little bit more about this as we explore, what are pentacles about and what are wands about. But essentially, it's not really age, it's not really gender, it's more about where those people cards, like what aspect of, what station of life, or what skill set, or what approach to life those people cards are describing. I hope that makes sense. So they essentially describe some aspect of ourself or some kind of aspect of the situation. There are 16 personality types that are likely to appear in your life. So we're going to cover the basic meanings of them, and then we're going to try to lean into this, this concept of them as intercessionary cards. As you also probably know, and feel free to drop any notes in the comments, the chat here if you have any questions, or if I need to break something down for you. Pentacles, discs, or stones, as they may be called in your deck, typically describe matters of security. It's health and wealth. It's physical stuff. It is the meat puppet in which we live. It is the resources, the time, the health, the hit points that we have, the gold points the gold that we have to spend. They're very practical. They are very much of the world. So whether you are, a seer, whether you're a seeker, sage, sibyl, whether you're king, queen, whatever cards come up in that realm, they're about practical stuff. If you are doing a reading and it's supposed to be all about, emotions, ideas, ideals, and all you're getting are pentacles cards, then you're having a fundamental disconnect about what's happening in the situation and what you think should be happening in the situation. Pentacles are practicals. With the swords cards, again, whatever gender or status or station, whether it's a knight or a prince or a queen or whatever, swords are the suit of air. They are intellect. They are ideas. They are words, particularly. I find that often for women, they are about communicating boundaries. So swords are very much about ideas, ideals, and the action that we make. They're uniquely human in that way. So again, if you're like, I'm here for the reading about emotions and all I'm getting is ideas, that is worth making a note of. Cups, on the other hand, this is the suit of water. It is all the sloshy, juicy, messy, emotional stuff. Sometimes it's creativity and inspiration. It is certainly about the feels. Whatever one of your people cards you've got. And wands are fourth set of cards there. The suit of fire. And that is creativity, willpower, and ambition, essentially. So again, whatever station of life you're talking about, be they princesses or be they queens, when it's wands, it's about the get or doneness. Incidentally, if you are looking for more written material, I always love to recommend Mary Kay Greer, who is the great tarot academic and scholar. She has a great book called Understanding the Tarot Court, which is basically the hands-on guide. It is the go-to for trying to get a handle on the many ways that we can work with people cards. Traditionally, they were called nobles, court cards, or face cards. I came into the habit of calling them people cards because, again, I wanted to move the cards away from these largely defunct systems of sort of hierarchy and class. They're not really about that anymore. They are about the qualities that the personalities have. So if you've got cards there, instead of looking at my talking head, I encourage you to move your cards around and maybe listen to the words as you look at your different sets. We're going to get to the pentacles first and then to the swords. So as far as this notion of people cards as personal saints, here's my background. I have struggled. I've worked with tarot cards for over 20 years. I have struggled with people cards. In and out I go with feeling very understanding and empathetic for them. But when they come up in readings, honestly, I often go, to me, they are the most challenging cards to read in the deck. I have been working with a great tarot mentor, the brilliant lady and artist in Terabang. And she offered this exercise up as a wonderful way to shift my thinking about the people cards. And I want to pass this notion on to you with full credit to her. So if you think about the major cards are the big life energies and the minors are your day-to-day stuff, the people cards are like the human faces on our life's necessary lessons, adventures, challenges, and attributes. The same way that for folks all over the world now, and certainly throughout a bunch of history, there's the great cosmic whatever, perhaps, but most folks can't really get their minds around the great cosmic whatever. So the notion of having, a Lua or a patron saint or some sort, or your ancestors, somebody a little more accessible that you can go to and say, I'm trying to figure this thing out. Help me get a handle on this aspect, this challenge, this attribute, this aspiration. And those ancestors or saints or intercessionary entities help make everything more available for you as a person who is engaged in the business of hoping, aspiring, and working towards results and change. So if saints, I'm going to lean into that and use that for the purposes of this exercise. If you're uncomfortable with saints as a word, again, you're welcome to plug that in for yourself as something else, some sort of intercessionary cards. These are the cards that are the people that you go to when you're like, I'm having troubles with these. So another way to think about it is like in established art traditions like Commedia, or if you want to think about it in the Jungian sense of archetypes, like there are certain things that we recognize as humans that are easier for us to grasp than this notion that 50% of your molecules are actually literally not here right now, and no one in science is quite sure where they go, and there are possibly multiple universes where multiple yous are doing things. It gets a little squirrely if you get that big trying to grasp reality, the way reality really is. Whereas this notion of leaning into something that you can recognize may be more useful for your primal mystical brain when it comes to trying to actually get things done. So with the interrobang exercise in mind, I worked my way through the standard definitions and personalities of all 16 of these personality cards. And for myself, I have made each of them the patron saint of whatever. And we will walk through the cards in a minute. What that means for you is that when the card comes up, instead of going, it's that guy again, it's the Sage of Pentacles, what am I even supposed to do with that? Hopefully this exercise or something like it will help you go, oh, the Sage of Pentacles, that's like the king. I get it. He's the patron saint of like security and leadership and and being a solid provider. So it's a different way of framing the information that those cards are trying to give you. So, and of course there's practical and woo-woo exercises we can choose to go into with them. But now's the part where we start talking about the cards themselves. So we come to the Pentacles. 4 personality types, different aspects of focus. All 4 of these personalities, all 4 of these saintly intermediaries, as it were, have some kind of support to offer you in the realm of addressing and actualizing security issues. The Sage, the King. Again, this is the patron saint of security, business, leadership. He is there to be an abundant provider. When that comes up in a reading for you, he is saying, hey there, perhaps you need to focus on these issues. Perhaps you need to think about the qualities that I embody and maybe ask for some help. And of course, you may interpret that as it's not so much that the tarot card is which is a piece of paper drawn by a person, is literally about to turn into a cosmic entity that can help you, but rather that it is a way for you to approach this concept that makes it more accessible instead of shouting into the psychic void. And you go, hey, patron saint, heck, make yourself a votive candle if it helps. Hey there, I really need to get a handle on some of this leadership, provider, security, stability stuff. Work with me. Likewise, the Queen, also known as the Sibyl, the patron saint of material nurturance. That is the hot pot of soup when you come in out of the cold. Practicality, working parents, getting your hands in the dirt. I'm looking at some of you particularly because I know exactly who is attending this seminar right now. And I know some of you, that is how you show, that is your love language, is getting your hands dirty and being that fully engaged, practical. It's the place where practical and community collaboration collide. The Seeker. Seekers, again, in my deck, typically represented on horses, but in some of these other decks that are out there, they can be on any number of things, amazing birds and all kinds of critters. The Seekers, or Knights, the patron saint of devoted effort. This particularly with the Knight or the Seeker of Pentacles, he is strong, he is committed, he does not know everything, but he is here to commit to this task of being patron saint of routine, conservation, curation. He's very much puts all of that power, all of that sort of impetuous energy into protection. The Seer, sometimes known as the Princess, or the Page, patron saint of developing skills, exploring new areas, being detail-oriented. It's very much the card of the person who is leaning into their studies and is sort of opening a new door and leaf in their life. So here's our sort of pantheon of the pentacles, as it were. And in your deck, they may be stones, they may be discs, but they're all that practical suit. Now we're going to jump into the swords. Swords, air, intellect, ideas, power of words. To me, and this is potentially sensitive, to me, both the Sage and the Sibyl of Swords are very much patron saints of spectrum-y people, people who have selective areas of skill, deep knowledge, fascination, and not always there with the soft, squishy parts. So the patron saint of spectrum-y people, super smart, super specific knowledge, big picture people. So the Sage of Swords, I think of him as being a patron of the big picture, authority, a commitment to veracity. He is always there for the truth, no matter the consequences. The Sibyl of Swords is very much, again, she's there for the spectrum-y people. This is the card of the systems-minded, the person who can, she's here to help you see how the whole thing fits together, how to dismantle that system and perhaps build something new. So systems-minded, hackers, and clear boundaries. Now the Seeker, again, that being like our Knight, this is the patron saint of ambition, action-minded, clear thinking, very much about getting out there and getting it done. And then we see our Seer. This is the power of words, learning the power of words at its best, poetry, at its best and worst, the internet. So I think of this, the patron saint of word of mouth and the power of words, new ideas, and new ways of communicating. For anyone who watched, was it American Gods, where they had the new god that arrived, was the media. I think of that very much here, sort of that raw, it's raw power, but she's not quite sure how it all works. From here, having gone from our pantheon of swords, moving into the pantheon of cups. Cups is water, of course, and the squishy emotional places. The Sage of Cups is a particularly challenged person because here we're talking about mastery, structure, like that's what the Sage, the kings bring, is like a, leadership, big picture, command, control, and yet water is impossible to grab hold of, right? So for him, to me, he is the patron saint of folks who are cognitively atypical, folks who are having to live very much in a realm of my emotions or my wiring may be one way, but society needs me to present it in a different way. So he's the patron saint of art, of diplomacy, which is essentially that transmutation of here are the facts and here is how it needs to be presented in order to communicate to get the end result. I'm a king, I'm good at that, but it's a lot of work. So he represents emotional self-control. Patron saint of art, diplomacy, and emotional self-control. Then we come to the Sibyl, or the Queen of Cups. In my deck, this is very much a mermaid. She's not trying to control the water, she is the water. She's the patron saint of emotional stability. Nothing phases her because she's really great at healthy love, self-care. She's the one who suggests the spa day, and compassion. So patron saint of healthy love, emotional stability, self-care, and compassion for others. We come now to the Seeker, the Knight. Patron saint, I love this guy. Love this guy. And he is simultaneously the patron saint of romance, high ideals, and hookups. This card can come up around commitment issues, is how I usually think of him, but in the context of sort of representing what he is with honesty in a positive sense. It's like, well, he's the one who says, I'm totally here for it, and I'm not here to make it weird, and I'm not here for the long term. I'm here to be representative of something wonderful and in the moment. So patron saint of romance, hookups, and high ideals. He really is the card of the ideal of chivalric love without all the fuss. And then we come to the Seer, patron saint of the creative impulse. It is the raw, unskilled urge to do, intuitive messages, and fresh feelings. So what she does is worthy, but she is brave and willing to be there for you when you are willing to try something new, something that is outside your well-controlled, sagely authoritative realm of leadership and stewardship. That's when you go, I don't know, maybe I want to finger paint, maybe I want to basket weave, maybe I want to learn something new. So there is our pantheon of cups. If you have questions, by all means, drop them in the chat and I will try to keep track. And then we come to the wands. Wands, of course, are fire. Fire, creativity, again, ambition, the drive. The sage or king, the patron saint, who is a light bringer, a leader, and an entrepreneur. So if you're thinking, golly, I really have a lot of questions about starting this new business, I really am not sure how and what I need to do. He would be your go-to guy. He's the one who is excellent at saying, hey, everyone, I've got a great idea. Don't we all want to do this? I know how to make this work. You'd be going, Sage of Wands. That's the personality I need to lean into and discover right now. The Sibyl, the patron saint of courage, independence, powerful mover, and a socialite in all of the strongest senses of that. She brings people together in order to make the things happen. Essentially every event organizer that I have ever known. Seeker, the patron saint of passion, impulse, and ambition. That is a young, driven person on a horse. They are ready to rush at the world and learn how things work, perhaps the hard way. And then the Seer, the patron saint of limitless potential, the free spirit, the fresh ideas. There is our pantheon of wands. Again, I refer everyone to Mary Kay Greer's book, Understanding the Tarot Court, if you want to get some more in-depth exercises on journaling with all of these folks. I have more in-depth information about every one of these people cards that I'm happy to share as well. But let us take a moment to talk about how these folks come up in a reading. Again, for me, as a person who goes, oh no, and I groan aloud when, when I get a lot of people cards in my readings.
You should think about the Queen of Wands.
Ah, indeed, I can do that. Queen of Wands. She is the patron saint of courage, independence. She is a powerful mover and a powerful socialite. I hope that that helps. So, as with all cards, when you're doing readings, when you're engaged in cartomancy, like that, when that is your focus as compared to meditation or other exercises, one of the first things you do when you have flipped the cards over and revealed who has showed up for the party you have thrown, I was not.
So let's talk a little more about the Knight of Wands.
Okay, yes. So this is what I'll do. I'm getting some good feedback over here from my control person. I've got somebody helping me in the studio. So I will answer your questions in just a moment. So what you're looking for in a reading, the first thing you do, you flip those cards over and you say, who has showed up for my information party? Who's happy to tell me more about me that I don't know? The first thing you look for is patterns. Do you have lots of majors? Do you have lots of people cards? Do you have lots of aces? Do you have lots of wands? Do you have lots of cards with the number 5? So the first thing you do is look for patterns. There's a lot that you can learn about that. When you see a whole lot of people cards, again, it tends to say there's either a lot of people influencing your decisions in your life, like actual people on the outside, or they have a lot to say about aspects of yourself that you need to lean into. If you're asking about business and you know that you are doing something on your own for the first time, you get a lot of leadership cards. They are giving you specific direction about what kind of intercession, what kind of qualities you need to bring to bear to the situation. So who is that? What was that question again?
Knight of Wands.
The Knight of Wands. So the Knight of Wands, also known as the Seeker of Wands, the patron saint of passion, impulse, and ambition. The Knight or the Seeker shares all of the drive, he shares all of the drive and all of the willingness to do the work that the Wands folks have. He just tends to be more impulsive, whereas by the time you get to Sibyldom or Sagedom, when you are feeling kingly and queenly, you probably have had enough life experience to temper that impulsiveness with experience that says, this is a good day to, it's funny, I'm not seeing those things in the chat over here. Anyway, so it is all about impulsiveness. What?
Ready.
Oh, okay, great. 8:30. So I'm going to talk a little bit more, and then I'm going to invite you to ask me specific questions. I do have quite a bit more information about each of these people cards that I'm happy to share with you. I have actually written down for you. I'm not sure whether the best way to do that is send it to you in the body of the message when I send you this video. I suppose it wouldn't be useful if I put it all in the chat because it's about 1,000 words. But I did prepare this material for you, so you've got sort of a slightly longer shorthand. Now, let's take a minute to talk about other ways that you can work with the people cards in the context of reading. So again, divinatorially speaking. Oh, we have a members area on my website. That's right. I forgot all about that. I can put stuff in there, which is theworldspirittarot.com. I just built this beautiful website, or had it built for me by the illustrious Carmel Clavin. And I'm still learning how to lean into it and use it. So let's talk a little bit about other exercises that we can use when we're working with the cards. Should you get a bunch of cards that pop up in your reading, a bunch of people cards, remember that no matter whether you're doing a Celtic Cross or the WTF reading or the triage reading or the labyrinth reading, there's so many different formats. Whatever it is, you always can give yourself permission to do a side reading. It's like if you picture that your reading is a plant, you know, there's the notion, there's that seed, there's that idea, and it, you know, the reading, you pull out all the cards and it shows you something about the sort of, you know, the vine and the flower. There's more that you can do. You can create an offshoot and go, huh, I got this Queen of Cups. I don't feel very Queen of Cups, or I don't see how Queen of Cups helps me with opening my new business. Tell me more. Hey, Queen of Cups, you're the patron saint of love with detachment, of being emotionally available for people and yet being invulnerable to psychic vampires. How could that be useful for me if I was opening a business with employees? You could do a little side reading, you know, where you say, tell me more, pull 2 or 3 cards. And you can do that every time that you have a people card, court card, face card, noble card, whatever you want to call it, pop up in a reading. Try to learn a little bit more about it. And if you think about them as, not just patron saints, but almost like, what's the word I'm looking for? If you think of them as support, like members of your support team and the efforts that you're making, whether it is, you know, trying to create collaborative art, whether it is starting business, whether it is trying to build a literal team on the outside of you or an internal team of qualities to help support you as you like do some shadow work or work through some of your personal trauma and so forth. Each of these cards speaks to a different set of virtues that can assist you. That being said, today you're getting sort of the shorthand of their best. When you lean into a book like Understanding the Tarot Court by Mary Greer, each of these personalities, as manifest in a real person, is also, you know, everybody's got their dark side too. The person that is full of great ideas and open-handed sharing at their best, you know, their shadowy aspect can be that they, you know, never stop talking and they run over you when you are trying to work out something, when you have an unformed idea that you're trying to hash out for yourself. So I want to make it clear that every one of these personalities has sort of their best sides and their more challenging sides, and you can really do a lot of work to get to know their better and their worst aspects. One of my favorite examples of that sort of gift and shadow aspect, for example, is in the card, the 5 of Wands. It's a card of competition. At its best, it is sort of healthy competition that helps one to excel. At its worst, competition is, you know, about dangerously undercutting other people's sense of their self-worth or being overly critical to ourselves. Both of those aspects are contained in that one card. It's going to take more than a quick trip through the reading in order to pull that out. All of these personality types here have that as well. But for the purposes of, I'm assuming if you are going to your patron saint of entrepreneurialism, or if you're going to your intercessionary saint helping you work on self-care and self-love, in those cases, you're probably not leaning into the more shadowy aspects of the personality. That is useful information. Okay, let me look and see if I just had any other bits in my notes that I wanted to bring to this today. I think not. I think that I will share, again, I have all this extra text for you, but it is mostly of the bullet point variety in more elaborate versions of what I have shared now, so we can put that into a shared reading area. Okay, someone is asking me right now, I don't tend to read reversals. Would you say that the shadow side of the court card is the reversed version? That is an excellent question. So, and it brings up the whole question of reversals. I don't tend to read reversals either. This is the first year, honestly, that I have begun to work with reversals. For anyone who's not sure what that means, 78 tarot cards. In theory, the deck includes all the information that you need in order to understand and interpret your life's events. So that means there should be a card to speak to everything that is both positive and negative. One way that readers through time have approached that is with reversals, where the card, let's say the card this way means love, this way it means hate. That is clearly a simplification, but if you flip the card over and it's upside down, dun, 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 it could mean the inverse of itself. The truth is, Angie, that there's actually, there's as much variety in how people read reversals. It's not as simple as just turning it around and saying, well, here's the good side, here's the bad side. But I do think that if you are a person who does read reversals, reversals and court cards is a good way to start to access their shadow material. Because if you're like, what would help me do, why am I struggling so much in this relationship that I'm having right now? And you get a reversed Queen of Cups. Well, she's the card of like love with detachment and not getting caught up in people's drama. If it's reversed in that context, it probably means you're not detached and you are getting caught up in the drama. So it's useful, but I don't think it's always going to be that straightforward. So you look at that, yes, and then you also look situationally at everything that's around it. I always derive some of my sense of whether we're looking at the virtues or the vices of a card based on the company that it keeps. Look at the other cards around it. If everything else around it is, rainbows and sunshine, you probably are not looking at too long a walk in the shadow of the valley of that difficult card. If all of the cards around it are full of turmoil and stress, then you probably are finding yourself in kind of a bad neighborhood in the tarot, if that makes sense. That's a great question. Thank you. Are there any other questions about court cards, reversals, or anything else? We've got a few more minutes before we wrap up. Again, I will make sure that everybody gets an edited copy of this video later on this week when we have a chance to do that. And I will find a way to share with you some of the written material. As Carmel pointed out, we've got this fancy website, theworldspirittarot.com, and it has a members area where I can post information. I suppose it's probably going to be password locked or something. We'll figure something out. I'm so used to just emailing people. So I'm happy to give that information to you. Next week, we are moving into the minors for the earlier class, and the second class during this time will be on exploring some radical tarot spreads that I love. So that's our themed material for next week. And then the week after that is going to be Halloween. If you have specific interests about how you want to use, questions about how we might use the cards in the Halloween week, it can be anything from, I want to do some readings at a party and I want some tips on how to keep it light and fun and Halloween-tastic to, full ritual woo-woo. Because of course, traditionally, we say that this is the time of year when the veil between the worlds grows thin, and it is an important time to give consideration to the deep work that we want to do in the winter and to connect with the energies of the universe, as it were, or of our beloved dead and so forth. So you can really lean into Halloween as a time for that. So I have a question also about when, there's a cat knocking on the door, I apologize. Where the videos get posted, they do end up on YouTube. Some of the last weeks are currently on YouTube, but unlisted. So I need to send you the link so that you can see it. Eventually they get opened up to the public, but I like to make sure that y'all have access to them first. And my Patreon folks get to see them first as well. So eventually I like to make everything public domain because I was able to learn all of this information. I was invited into the world of tarot by the generosity of other people who were willing to help me and teach me in the time and the ways that I could afford. So I like to try to keep things as accessible as possible likewise. Hence this all levels, pay what you can or don't pay at all if you can't, because those are the times we live in. Tarot series. The cat very much wants to come in. You're not allowed in the studio. These ears, this is the only cat in here. I think that probably brings us to the end of our time. I've got the controller over there. So if you have any questions during this week, please reach out. I'm always able to bring more material to the class if I know what you want to know in advance. Those are our topics for next week. Again, minors and specific spreads. If there are specific kinds of spreads that you would love me to touch on, I'm happy to make the time for it. Videos and notes will be coming to you. Check your email in order to make that happen. And I'm very grateful to you all for choosing to spend this time with me. We are all trying to navigate in these strange times. And trying to get better at our jobs. As you can see, we have lighting and equipment and things these days. I want to do this for you in the way that you need it to be done. The more you tell me what you need, the more I can meet the need, because I'm intuitive, but I'm not psychic. I think that's it for me today. Again, I appreciate you all. My name is Madame Ansa, hardest working woman in show business and the artist and author of the World Spirit Tarot. And this has been week 2 of our Halloween season 2020 Kitchen Witchy Tarot. A special thanks to Paula Garbanzo over there helping to run all the controls tonight. No thanks to Halloween the cat, who would like to celebrate his birthday by banging on the door. And I think that's it. Blessed be y'all. Have a great night.